Thank you for joining us today. We are in the middle of a series called Happy, and this week we are talking about humility. And humility really is one of the things that leads us on the path to the happy life. As we've been discussing during this series, the happy life isn't found in circumstances or stuff or things, but it's found in Jesus. Like, Jesus is the happy life, and humility is the path to Jesus. Humility allows us to admit that we don't have it all together, that we can't figure it out on our own, that we need more than what we've got. And our passage today looks at what it really means to be humble. So join me in Zephaniah chapter 3, beginning in verse 12. But I will leave within you the meek and humble. The remnant of Israel will trust in the name of the Lord. They will do no wrong. They will tell no lies. A deceitful tongue will not be found in their mouths. They will eat and lie down, and no one will make them afraid. Sing, daughter Zion, shout aloud, Israel, be glad and rejoice with all your heart. Daughter Jerusalem, the Lord has taken away your punishment. He has turned back your enemy. The Lord, the King of Israel, is with you. Never again will you fear any harm. Now, Zephaniah was a prophet who spoke to God's people, the people of Judah, warning them for God against coming judgment. In this passage, though, Zephaniah says that there will be a restored remnant, a faithful people who've stayed faithful, who've stayed humble. This remnant that would be preserved. They were faithful and they were humble. God's people were punished for their pride, for their refusal to care for those in need. But the humble, they were going to be restored. They'd be restored to Jerusalem. The humble, they didn't live prideful lives. They didn't think that they had it all together. They didn't think that they should live life how they wanted to. The pride, they thought, we're going to live life how we want. God's telling us to take care of the poor and the widows. And they just ignored him because they were prideful. They were arrogant. They thought they were living life the best way that it could be lived. And yet there's this faithful remnant who were humble, who admitted that they didn't have it all together, that they weren't God, that they needed to live life differently than what they thought was best. And so when we choose to be humble, we really are choosing to live like Jesus. Jesus is the happy life. Living life like Jesus leads us to the truly happy life. And the path to Jesus is the path of humbling ourselves. And humility plays out in a lot of different ways. But even just looking at kind of this faithful remnant and the people who were punished, it was pride. The people who were punished, they were arrogant. They thought that their ways were the best ways. They refused to humble their hearts and listen to what God wanted. And yet there was the faithful remnant who were humble, who probably recognized what was going on was wrong and did their best to live how God wanted them to live. They admitted that they didn't have it all together. They admitted that their way wasn't better than God's way. In Isaiah, it talks about how God's ways are different than ours. His ways are so much higher and better than ours. And it takes humility to recognize that. But if we're full of pride, if we're full of arrogance, we think that we know better, that the choices we want to make are better than listening to how God wants us to live our lives. Can you imagine the arrogance to say that we know better than God? And yet we say that very often in our lives. Maybe not out loud. Maybe we don't even think it. But when we choose to do what we want instead of what we know God wants for us, every time we do that, we are guilty of pride. We are guilty of arrogance. We are guilty of saying that, God, I know better than you. Yes, God, I know you want me to live this way, but I think it's better for me to live this way. We all do it. And the way out of those foolish choices is the way of humility. Humbling ourselves, confessing that we've chosen to go our own way instead of God's way, and humbly asking God to help us every single day to live our lives as he would have us live our lives. Whether it's with our family, with our friends, at work, whatever it is, can we have the humility to say that, God, I don't know how to live my life the best way. Please help me. Can you humble yourself even in that way this week? Thank you for joining us.